Hi, I'm Pastor Bill Brannan. I'm with the Liberty Hill Voters Association, and I'm here today with Ryan Anglen, the owner of Whitestone Brewery, and we just are discussing some of his experiences that he's had operating a business in both Liberty Hill and in Cedar Park, and kind of comparing and contrasting those differences. The reason why I wanted to speak with Ryan today is because what I learned by speaking to him has direct impact on potentially the cost of property tax to Liberty Hill citizens. And so I think the things that you're going to hear today in our conversation are very important and relevant to you, the citizen of Liberty Hill.
But yeah, like you said, we opened Cedar Park, Whitestone Brewery, roughly 10 years, just under 10 years ago. And, that was our first business. So it's hard to draw a total contrast to the opening here, because there was a lot of differences. However, looking back now and just kind of the struggles that we've had, I think we can kind of make an analysis of what we would like to see done a little bit differently. The differences in Liberty Hill were that we were not setting up brewing operations, so that was the big part. Whereas in Cedar Park we did. So kind of overflow. And then that bled into 2 years after actually saying, hey, what the heck, let's start a tap room. And then going through the motions with the city of what that would look like. And it was definitely different, going through the planning commission, rewriting the rules for brewery, distillery, tap room, brewery, distillery, winery. And we just sort of adopted that from TABC laws. But, that all of that takes time. And so it was definitely a different process. Whereas I think Cedar Park was probably in just a different stage of growth at that time. So I think a comparison would be probably unfair, but looking back, there's definitely things that, I think as young business owners, we would have done a lot differently.
Right. Well, I remember when we were talking, and the one thing that really struck me was when you explained some of the specific challenges that you face, like you just referenced right now, even needing to rewrite things in the planning and zoning to be able to open up the brewery here. It caused a lot of additional time to be taken. And
Correct.
One of the things that first comes to my mind is that when somebody's opening up a business, you end up investing capital. You take on leases, you start to take on other financial liabilities. And so when time is increased between starting and opening, you end up starting in the red. You start with a hole that isn't conducive to helping businesses succeed in a city. And as you were explaining some of these challenges that you were facing, I remember what I was thinking. And I was thinking to myself, if what you're telling me is true, then we're going to have a situation where the only solution for the city that needs to grow, it has to grow. The reason it has to grow is because outside of the city, we have tons of new housing developments that are growing. And this has nothing to do with the city. This is happening at the county level. Those citizens, those people, those additional homes are creating additional strain on the resources of Liberty Hill. Just the additional traffic on the roads is creating additional wear and tear. Just the increased traffic is creating a greater demand for police in Liberty Hill.
Sure.
And if Liberty Hill doesn't develop other sources of revenue than what we have right now, and that main source being sales tax and revenues from businesses that you guys bring to the city, then we will necessarily have to increase our property taxes. That's what I was thinking when we were talking. Yeah. And I didn't know it at the time, but I went to a city council meeting and discovered that's what they're doing right now. They're increasing our property tax. And I thought to myself, if we do not figure out how to get the citizens invested in creating an environment that is conducive to business development in Liberty Hill and help businesses to flourish here and bring that revenue to us, then the citizens are going to suffer through increased property taxes.
Sure.
So when you were opening up, one of the things you mentioned to me was an issue that you had with the tree. And I'd like to just have you talk about that now, because when I think about it, it's the tree ordinance in Liberty Hill, and I think that's a great thing. I think that all citizens should want to create a beautiful city that has really wonderful trees and looks really good and is really inviting to citizens. As a matter of fact, that's what businesses want too, because the more inviting a city is, the more people are going to want to come and visit it. But at the same time, if we don't figure out how to get feedback back from business owners of the process of dealing with situations that require the removal of a tree for the benefit of the city, for the benefit of the business, for the benefit of the economy, and we add all this additional time, then we're going to end up hurting ourselves. And so I think a lot of these policies are created because people really care. I think the politicians care about the city, the citizens care about the city,
yeah.
But we're not getting enough feedback from business owners, and part of the problem is that business owners are often not living in the city limits. As a matter of fact, many people who identify as I belong to Liberty Hill, when I talked to them, I found out, well, actually, technically you don't. You might belong to the school district, so you think you're Liberty Hill, but you're actually not in the city limits, and you don't get to vote. So you don't actually have a direct say.
So I think that's a huge impact.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so it's a lot to download there, but so let me first say that I think, again, as a young entrepreneur, my wife and I, granted we've had the business in Cedar Park for 8 years, but that's kind of what we've come to know, is that's at least relatively how cities kind of embrace small businesses, support small businesses, run small businesses, with a chamber that I think kind of marries those two together. So I think up here, just all of that was different. And so I think for us, it was probably a lot of naivety, just kind of assuming that this would eventually, I think the last thing we thought was that we'd be pioneers.
Yeah.
Because financially, we just weren't set up to be that.
Right.
And, obviously now looking back, a lot of wrong assumptions. The tree story was actually not us. We were actually second on the docket on the Planning Commission to start the brewing process. And at the time, it wasn't even brewing beer. It was just brewing which isn't even brewing, doing our hop water, our non-alcoholic. We have 3 tanks back there. So that was the initial scope, is to take this one product that was taking up tank time in Cedar Park and do it up here, and have a kind of separate revenue that wasn't taken away from our revenue in Cedar Park. And just, to me, that was just a natural way that you grow a business, right? Expansion, to me at the time, it was smart expansion, but obviously hindsight's 2020. So the tree was actually, I believe it was Popeyes. We were second on the docket, so we had to kind of wait 30, 45 minutes for Popeyes to get through. And it was, I believe the tree was, and I'm not remembering all the specific details, but the tree was somewhere in the vicinity of their drive-through, needed to be removed. And if I remember correctly, the circumference of the tree was a certain diameter that dictated a certain ordinance. That ordinance wasn't in place, so that had to be postponed. I remember the Popeyes representative was visibly frustrated at that, and I believe made the comment along the lines of, well, if you can't get this done now, we've already got all our financing, we're to pull out. Now, I have no idea what's happened to that since, or that was my only visibility into that, but I do recall as a 3-person planning commission at the time, and I do recall one of those individuals stating that, are we all in agreement that this tree is going to be removed? All unanimously said yes. And then the end of that was, well, we can't do anything without an ordinance. That is the right way to do it, which I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying that's, for small businesses, that time is crippling. Right, so if you don't know that in advance, and you don't know that Liberty Hill does not have that ordinance in effect, which I don't really know how you would find that out in advance. So those are the things going through my head going, well, that would cripple us, right? Popeyes is a heck of a lot bigger than Whitestone. So that was just, I don't think I paid attention to it at the time.
Right.
Because I was in my own world and, had my own docket to focus on. But looking back now, I think I definitely could have taken that as a warning sign.
Yeah.
So, it's eye-opening. This town to us has been a very much an anomaly if we draw comparisons, which I try not to do because they are different towns, probably with different agendas. And
right.
But I believe that, relatively speaking, there should be a similar path, especially for small businesses. And it hasn't just been one or two things, it's been a number of things that have just been crippling. And just the fact that, for us it's a little too late now, but look back and see how many things have kind of taken this when we have a healthy business there that is basically just needs to overachieve to compensate for the losses, the massive losses that this location does, is I think just, again, to the young business owners, it's crippling.
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, once I met with you, at the time I was on the Charter Home Rule Commission, but it made me very interested in what's happening in the business community here in Liberty Hill. So I went and talked to other business owners and have found many similar stories as yours. And I think that what's happening is that we have good leaders in the city. We have actually amazing citizens. I mean, I love the values that Liberty Hill citizens have and just the identity of the city. And I think what's happening is that we need to have better lines of communication and be able to solve problems and think about things in terms of how do we remove inefficiencies for economic development. If we understood the incredible value of building businesses in a local economy so that sales tax revenues skyrocket, citizens, I think, would really get behind this. I think that if the leaders understood that, hey, the citizens are behind you. If you want to be creative, if you want to go off the map, if you want to create systems for the city that is going to prioritize the economic benefit of citizens, we've got your back. We're encouraging you to do this. We're for you. We're behind you. Don't be afraid. You know, and so, but when we were talking the other day, you mentioned to me, because you are connected with the broader business community, the larger business community outside of Liberty Hill is starting to get a reputation. Would you say that's accurate?
Without a doubt, yeah. And I know, again, I'm in a bubble, right? This is my livelihood, and this is what I think about, if not 100% of the time, close to it. So I try to take that in perspective, however, and draw away from my own frustration, because, again, when it's your livelihood, you get passionate about it.
Yeah.
But I am definitely, especially within the last 8 to 12 months, with kind of the perfect storm, macroeconomic issues going on and things like that, I've heard a lot of frustrations, and yes, I think the reputation is starting to build outside of the Liberty Hill community. I think there's still great things about Liberty Hill. There's still things that I think, same with me, why I fell in love with this. That was the goal in mind, is to eventually we live in Leander right now. We've lived there 10 years, and eventually we'd bring our kids north. We saw this and made our assumptions just, based on just, I thought it was kind of common sense, but I'm finding that it wasn't, that this town will have to grow because, they've got national headlines now about being one of the fastest growing towns, cities in America. And I just thought, worst case scenario, maybe the compromise would be that Liberty Hill can maintain some of that personality and character that they want, but the growth is going to happen because there's already been certain things already accepted, and you already have rooftops being built. So I thought, from my standpoint, there's no way that this doesn't happen. It's just, how will it happen? Mm-hmm. And I sit here 4 years later, and it has not happened. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing.
So, but anyways, what I was saying is that I think a lot of people don't understand how everything is in each other's benefit, that we really have the ability to help citizens by helping businesses and help our city leaders to really develop a flourishing, healthy, vibrant community in Liberty Hill. I think that what we have in Liberty Hill is something very special, and we just need to come together and get more and more people involved.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, I think, and that's not an easy thing to do, I think, but otherwise I think you have more of the same that's going to keep going on. So I think, yeah, voices need to be heard, and I think there needs to be, that's where the transparency and communication come in. But I 100% agree with you. I think the residents of Liberty Hill probably starts with them. It's the power in the people, right? You got to start at a local level. And listen, this is your town. You live here, raising kids here. It's the same that my wife and I sort of approached in Leander for the last 10 years. We're very involved there because we want to have an impact on how we have 2 daughters, and they're going to spend a majority of their really impressionable years there, if not more. You want to have an impact as to how that looks. Our business is not in Leander, but we're very involved with the business of Leander. We align with a lot of what you just said in terms of obviously we're in a certain business, but we try to frequent the local businesses and kind of do health checks. And because we do feel as residents, it is a portion of that is our responsibility. Now, if you don't want a certain business or you don't want to support chains, that's well within your right? But I think to get people together and actually come together and say, okay, what do we want as a whole?
Yes.
Probably a smart way to start,
right.
And just, and then you can at least, sort of treat it like, it's not a mystery why companies come out with mission statements. You want to put out what your goal is and how you want, especially bigger companies, right? Because how are you going to trickle that down to every single employee? Well, if you have a mission statement, then you're all on kind of the same page. If you don't want to work here, you don't want to work here. So I think starting it with the power of the people is probably the common sense approach. Not that it's easy, but I think it's a start to put your value system in place.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, again, I really appreciate you taking this time to record this video with us, and just want to invite everyone who has stayed with us this long to come on down to Whitestone Brewery, enjoy a beer and conversation with your friends, maybe pick some up on your way home, and really just support local business. And as a representative of the Liberty Hill Voters Association, I'd also like to invite you to get involved with us. We need to get more and more people involved in our city, caring about our city, putting our heads together, having conversations, and help develop a thriving community here for the citizens and for our children and for future generations. And you can find us at facebook.com/groups/LH Voters. So I just invite you to get involved. Thank you.